tell you about the friend of mine that used to print up these books called Chances. He used to sell them. Everybody bought them. They never asked what they were going to win. They just bought them. And, so and then when somebody would ask him, somebody said, well, what do you win on the chase? He said, well, I don't know, but the great prizes. He said, you never know from month to month. You may be one of the winners. Of course, the only winner that was around, of course, was him. He was doing pretty good. Hey, listen, speaking of great chances, friends, once in a while you pick up the newspaper. Generally, I read the newspaper, and you get the same stories every day. Have you had a feeling that everything is slugged, that they keep repeating the same story? Department of Labor reports income down. Department of Labor reports 17% rise in unemployment. Department, and you just see this stuff until finally your head gets kind of clogged with it. It seems like they've been having the same news report from Cambodia for 10 years. It's the same news report from Vietnam and all. So you're not with it. And then you wonder, you hear this, some politician will get on and say, yes, I believe that the American people are very, very concerned over the situation that's happening in Phnom Penh. And I don't know anybody. I've never heard anybody even mention it. But I guess we're not part of the American people, right? Would you agree, Joe? Not really. I mean, the American people, no, I'm not. What do you mean I am? You mean just because I once lived in Indiana, I'm part of the American? Oh, we are the American people. Well, then somebody's kidding, because I've never heard you hear what's happening in Phnom Penh and showing great concern over it. In fact, you don't even know where Phnom Penh is. All right. That's not even in Burma, friend. So I picked up the Times, my usual. It's a reflex action I always do. I walk past a newsstand, instantly buy a newspaper. I one time bought 4 newspapers of the same edition just because I kept walking past stands and I'd forgotten that I'd done it. I just keep buying them. So I bought this paper saying, and I get back into the back of the cab there, and I look out the window, and in fact, it was almost impossible to look out the window. You've been in a New York cab recently, haven't you? You have noticed that New York cabs seem to be like motor-driven magnets for filth. Many times you'll get in the New York. Oh no, some of them are great. They're clean. Like I got in a guy's cab one night, and he had a tape deck. He had about 15 tapes going. He had all kinds of tape decks. And what was he playing? You would expect him to be playing Pimple Rock. You would expect him to be playing, almost any kind of music except what I got. I couldn't believe it. I'm listening to Turkish music. It's fantastic, Oh, dung, da, da, dung, da. This is coming out. So I said to him, I said, wow, because you like that? And I said, it's really great, terrific. Do you always play Turkish? He said, I love this music. I said, well, are you Turkish? Nah. I'm from Queens. I guess, so he just plays Turkish music. So that was one of the better moments in the cab. So we sat there, and listened to the Bard of Izmir bat it out. You know who the Bard of Izmir is, do you? You don't. Well, you guys don't know anything, do you? However, I'm sorry, Joe. However, I'm sitting back in a cab today, knee-deep in cigar butts, and I can't look out of the window because it's covered with crud. And I open up the paper, and there's right on the front page is a fantastic story. I'm really digging it. Listen to this. May I please lay this on you, friends? You don't hear this on the Walter Cronkite Show. The largest known creature ever to have flown, an extinct winged reptile with an estimated wingspan of 51 feet. That's the length of an IRT subway car, has been discovered by fossil hunters in Texas. Now, that's a big, big creature. Wow. And it looks great. You ought to see it. It's called a pterosaur, Pterosaur, pterosaur. You know what the pterodactyls are like. Well, this is a pterosaur. It's really something else, man. The animal, which lived something more than 60 million years ago, had twice the wingspan of the biggest previous known pterodactyl, or winged reptile, and nearly 6 times the wingspan of the condor, which is the largest flying bird now alive. That's a lot of bird. It's not a bird, it's a mammal. The estimated size of the creature is derived from calculations based on the sizes of many fragmentary and some complete bones found in excavations during the last 3 years in Big Bend National Park. It's in Brewster County, Texas. Well, now wait. Now, I'm reading this thing, and I'm sitting in the cab, and I say, hey, you know, that sounds familiar. That really does. And there's a picture of him there. See, they have a you know, you remember the pictures that they showed you when you were in the Army or the Air Corps or the Air Force rather, or the Navy. They used to show you these pictures on ID, aircraft identification, right? And they were all done in silhouette, and they'd show you this picture, see, and you'd holler F8, you know, or something like that, see, right? Well, they have him in an ID type picture. It's an aircraft identification picture there. And there he is. See, you can see him. And he's beautiful, fantastic, big thing. And he's got a long neck that sticks out way out in front. He looks a little bit like the SST. You know how that Russian SST looks with the long beak and the drooping nose? And there he is, see? And it's a beautiful looking thing, see? Great thing. See him, Joe, there? There he is, see? All right. And then they show you, to give you an idea of the comparative size of these things. Do you see what's next to him there? That is an F-4 fighter plane. He is much larger than an F-4 fighter plane, which has a wingspan of 38 feet and 5 inches. So you can see how much bigger he is than an F-4 fighter plane. He's got 51 feet going for him. And way down here is the Pteranodon, which is the pterodactyl they know about, which has a wingspan of 25 feet. That's the biggest one they ever knew of. There he is, see? And way down at the bottom, that little dot there is the condor. So you can see condor. Why, the condor could ride in this guy's wingtip tanks. He is some animal. See, so I'm reading this thing. Wow. It says, you want to hear some more of this? It says, announcement of the discovery, which was made in the March 14th issue of Science, is expected to rekindle a half-century-old debate among paleontologists over whether flying reptiles flapped their featherless, leathery wings like birds and actually flew, or merely climbed up onto high perches and then leaped into the air currents, to soar like gliders. In any event, they were obviously airborne. In other words, did they rise off the ground by flapping their wings like a bird that you know of, or did they soar, which would mean jumping off of a cliff and catching an air current and soaring? You imagine this thing 51 feet soaring. Wow, what a sight. One scientist familiar with the discovery said that the great size of the newly found creature might make it seem improbable to some experts that it was able to rise into the air under wing power alone. He noted, however, by the way, they also said for years, you know, they studied the bee. Under any known aeronautical laws, the bee should not fly. Did you know that? The bee's body is too big and too heavy for its wing structure. So there's something else going here. We're not quite sure. You know, maybe there is one theory that the bee moves his wings so fast. In other words, he gets so much RPM going, and therefore develops a higher torque and develops higher horsepower than his size of wing should enable him. But then on the other hand, there's experts who say this is not so, that the muscular system of the bee does not enable him to develop that kind of torque power. But nevertheless, he flies like mad. You've been hit by bees, right? You know they fly. So there's no argument. Anyway, he says it is virtually impossible, however, because they don't know how much the creature weighed. You know, they don't really know whether it was a heavily muscled creature or whether it was just a lot of bones and very thin skin, and that's all. It says they don't know how much it actually weighed, so they can't figure out its aerodynamic properties. Well, now, I want to tell you, see, as the piece gets a lot more, this thing has got a 51-foot wingspan. So I'm sitting in the cab, see, and you know, there's a sound of great familiarity to that. Sound of great familiarity to it, see, and it suddenly hit me. Yes, They are describing a creature that I know about, and that you do too. They are describing Rodan. Yes, they are describing Rodan. Nope, sorry. You did the wrong one. I knew it. You guys are all off in there. All right, don't worry. We're not going to have any tapes. You're out. You're out. You're out. You're out. You're out. It was bum, ba-dum, bum. Now, why that came on, I don't know. Yeah, all now right, you do it. Now you do it. Now you do it, for crying out loud. Boy, oh, boy. You know, that's what happens. You guys change the shift right in the middle of the show, and then you all stand in and talk for 20 minutes. Nobody knows what's going on. What is this? You know, that happened to me down at television one day. I was doing a show down here, and I rehearsed it with one crew, and the other crew came on, and they were the ones that did the show. All right. Oh, well, that's called union rules. They have very little to do with reality in most cases. They're just rules. But I'm sorry, Jim. You want to try that again? Let's try it again. Now, you got it queued up? Okay. They were describing Rodan.
All right, everybody, let's dance.
Okay. That's about all we can do around here, Bogey, is dance. We don't do much in the way of radio-type stuff. But that was real nice. Rodan. No, really, seriously. Do you remember Rodan? Well, do you picture him in your mind? How did Rodan look? Well, that's right. He was a giant pterodactyl, wasn't he? He had his enormous wings. Well, see, you missed the first half of the show, Jim. I'm not going to recap it, except to say on the front page of the Times, they have discovered the fossil remains of the largest flying creature ever discovered. 51-foot wingspan. There he is. In fact, there he is shown next to an F-4 fighter, so you see how much bigger he is. That's Rodan. That is Rodan. Rodan. Now, wouldn't it be terrible now if the next thing you know, in fact, it'd be great, actually, if they're digging away someplace down in Utah, in the Salt Flats or something, and they come across the fossilized remains of Godzilla. You know, it existed 72 million years ago. And the one I hope that they find, seriously, it's my favorite one. There's two favorite monsters I have. The Japanese-type monster, which is a very different kind of monster from the European-type monster. You notice the European-type monster, European movies, and we're European in this sense, Western man movies. Our monsters tend to be based on men. Have you noticed that? Frankenstein's monster is based on, Dracula is based on a man, a human. Whereas their monsters tend to be based on, who knows? They're ancient creatures, is what they are. They're always afraid that coming out of the sea. You notice that almost every one of their monster movies has the same theme. It opens up with a shot of the atom bomb, and then the voice says, "Man, dealing with forces over which he has little knowledge, has set forth in action great forces that he does not yet know the end of, great forces which can produce unknown dangers." And you see this great bubbling cloud, and then you see a shot of the sea, right? And suddenly you see the waves part, and out of the sea comes a creature that goes, yes, it is.
All right, everybody, let's dance.
It is Chimera. Little echo chamber on that would make it nice. Chimera. That's my favorite monster. Chimera. Do you remember Chimera? What did Chimera do? You don't know about Chimera. Oh, that's a esoteric monster. Chimera ate electricity, and he had to have a constant intake of apparently alternating current. He didn't need batteries. He had he ran on AC strictly, and Chimera came up out of the sea, and immediately began to run around, and he was eating up high-tension wires like noodles. Yeah, and it shows one of the great scenes was Chimera searching out this great Japanese AC power station. You know, all the transformers and the great big signs that says "Hongayawa," which means danger, stay away, 50 million volts. And he was climbing up to this thing, and sure enough, he attacks the gate there, and down it went. And this giant monster started to eat transformers. And sparks coming out of his ears. And all the while he would go, boom, boom. What a scene. I loved it, you know. Well, you got to remember that the Japanese have invented, you know, their big art form today is the transceiver. And the transponders and every kind of electrical equipment dealing with transistors and ICs, you know, the whole bit. That's their thing. So naturally, they would have a monster that would proceed to do the worst thing that can happen to a Japanese: eat up his electrical transformers. You know. When will we come up with a true monster? You know, most people are not afraid of monsters. You know, when they see them in the films, because they seem to do nothing but run around the landscape and chase the hero and the heroine. That's about all they ever do. But the thing that makes the Japanese monster have a little extra dimension is that he has usually a motive for doing this. He doesn't just chase people around and get mad at them like the giant scorpion or something that we have a few of those giant scorpions, giant bees that lay it on to people. But the Japanese monster comes out, and he wants to get at the transformer. And now the people keep getting in his way, naturally, because they want to watch color television and all that stuff, and the monster keeps tearing down the high-tension wires, and that just gets in the way of watching Cannon, you know. And so naturally the populace was in great uproar because of Chimera. Now Chimera wasn't after them; he was after the transformers. Now can you imagine? Shepard has just come up with a great monster. So you ready for it? Let's see. I'll have to think of his name. Okay, you ready for it? Give me. I want that bump, bump. You are now going to meet a new monster which Shepard has just invented. His name is Godzonka.
All right, everybody, let's dance.
No, cut out the dancing business. It's too serious, friend. We're not going to dance. Not with Godzonka on the scene. And Godzonka, see, you notice I cleverly took a name that was a combination of a couple of Japanese monsters and also crossed it with Larry Zonka, who's a well-known monster. And so Godzonka comes out of the sea, and naturally it has to come out of the sea. Or either that, or he comes out of an unexplored recess of a lost cave in Utah. How do you like that, see? He's been lying dormant for 10 billion years, going all the way back to the age, in fact, before the age of the reptiles, before the Brontosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus Rex came on the scene. Godzonka was walking around and doing his thing. See, just like that. Now you laugh. You said this is impossible. Well, they've discovered Rodan. So I say, if they discover Rodan, they could easily discover Godzonka. Now, what does he do? What does Godzonka do? Well, now, Godzonka, first of all, he's an indescribably horrible-looking creature. He looks like a cross between a gigantic, overblown bat. He's an enormous bat. If you can imagine a bat, right? You know what a bat looks like. Not the kind Reggie Jackson uses. I'm talking about a bat with wings, you know. A great big bat with that real rotten-looking face. You know that rotten face bats have. He's a cross between a bat and a slug. You know what a worm is? You know, that's an ugly-looking worm, right? You know, the little icky-looking white worm. Well, can you imagine this giant creature? He's been lying dormant in this cave in Utah. See, we're creating a Class X cheapie. Remember, it's not X-rated. It's just Class X. Has a budget of $75, $80. They'll shoot it in 20 minutes. The film will run 107 minutes. So you can see how, you know, this is this monster. So this monster It opens up with the usual opening. Joe, would you give me a little echo chamber? Now hold it there. I'll give you a cue for that. See, it opens up, and you see this atom bomb go. And then over the sound of that great big thing, see, this voice comes on that says the following. Mankind must beware. Mankind is experimenting with forces that could easily get out of control. And such an event as we are about to describe not only could have happened, but probably will happen in the future. Godzonka! And you see this great big cloud off in the distant sea. The atom bomb has gone up. They're testing. You know how crazy military men are in all these movies. They're always telling, we must test, Dr. Strangelove. We have to blow up the bombs. And boom, the bomb goes up, right? And so you see the camera suddenly switches away from this bomb, and it switches to what looks like a deserted desert area of a far remote district in Utah or Wyoming. You see nothing but desert. And you hear the wind blowing over it with a quiet. You see the sand blowing, and you see a tumbleweed rolling along. And then, suddenly, the camera moves in, dollies into the side of a very rocky, rugged mountainside. You see nothing but rocks and cactuses and crummy-looking stuff, right? And you see bones of ancient horses where the settlers who have gone west have died there, and the bones still remain. And it's very remote. In fact, you could even put up a sign, say, remote, unexplored area, right? And so, as the camera, you let the people know, you don't want to let anybody be misunderstanding this, see? Because the next thing you know, somebody can say, hey, I recognize that place. That's Charlie's backyard. It looks rotten just like that. I know where they shot that. You can't let them have this. So it has to have an unexplored place, see? So the camera moves in, and you see this cave. And it's all covered with weeds, obviously, see? It's never been discovered. It's got weeds and rocks and all that stuff. And suddenly, you hear, coming out of the cave, this sound. You hear the sound. And then the camera switches, and now we are in the Pentagon. And we see young Steve Trueheart, who is an atomic scientist, and his girlfriend, Beverly O'Toole. And yes, Beverly is a biochemist. And, of course, there is the old professor. He's played by Keenan Wynn. You see, he's in makeup. He's got this big white wig, and he's got this big white mustache. And he is the old professor, and they call him Herr Doctor, right? And so Herr Doctor says, well, I'm just not sure that there is not something here. I know they have been laughing at my theories for years, but I will tell you this, that there was once an ancient creature who lived. I have a bone fragment who says that this ancient creature named Godzonka once lived, and he could very well be what is terrorizing the Southwest. And, of course, Steve Trueheart says, come on, Professor, this is the 20th century. That kind of stuff only happens in Class B movies. Just a little touch of irony in the script. That kind of thing only happens in Class B movies. And then there's a quick cut, and you see it is night now. It is nighttime, and you are back out in the desert. The wind is now howling. And you see these two giant lights that are getting closer, and they're enormous. They're way up in the air, and you suddenly realize they are eyes. And just as you realize they are eyes, once again, it lets forth its blood-curdling cry. Oh, wow. Do you like Godzonka? I'm telling you, every one of you out there sitting on the edge of your chair, on the edge of the seat, you want to know what Godzonka does, huh? Well, I'll tell you, I'm very excited about him. He's one of my favorite monsters. I just created him, and for that reason, he's my favorite monster. I mean, you know how the ego is. However, speaking of other monsters, I guess one of the most enigmatic and mysterious of all monsters that I have enjoyed on several occasions is Mothra. Do you remember Mothra? That's a fantastic monster. You saw Mothra? Well, there were a lot of mysterious Oriental things in that one. Mothra was a gigantic moth, right? But the most mysterious thing about him was that he had these two little 2-inch high girls that sang to him. Now, I couldn't figure out what the hell that was about. You remember these two, yeah, they were 2 inches high, right? And they sang to the moth. Right, and it was kind of almost operatic the way they sang to him. And he would sit there, wag his feelers in the air, and that was truly the inscrutable East. However, either that or the producer had this, pair of girls. Well, that's another story, because it just seemed to me that they were bringing two different stories together there. It's like Ethel Merman is dancing on the back of Godzilla. You couldn't figure out what you're supposed to watch. See? Barbara Streisand meets Frankenstein. Well, nevertheless, oh yes, you want to get back to Godzonka? Oh, wait a minute. Oh yes. All right now, where are we? Yes, that's right. The old professor. If you recall, as we left last week's episode, the old professor, remember, as we left him, was saying, "Well, I know that there are things that quite could very well be that could bring back that great ancient monster which I have formulated in my theories, which they have all laughed at. Oh, they have laughed at my theories. That Godzonka, which lived 1 million years before the age of Tyrannosaurus Rex, could very well have been activated by the atom bomb tests which have been going on out in Utah. Now, they have left when I said that, but they have left many times in the past. They left at Leonardo da Vinci. They left at the Wright brothers. They left at Johnny Carson when he first came on. But look at it now. I will tell you, I say this could be what is happening out there." And then as we left, you remember, we heard this strange, eerie sound with these two headlights, what appeared to be headlights approaching high in the air over the darkened deserts of the most remote part of Utah. The sound we heard was... fantastic sound. And we knew something was happening, right? I mean, even the dumbest viewer knew that there was something going on when you hear sound like that and you see these two lights approaching, right? Now, the camera switches and we see, strangely enough, you see, most things are never explained in these monster movies. We see now Steve Trueheart and his girlfriend, Barbara O'Toole, was that her name? Yes, Barbara O'Toole, the young chemobiologist, psychologist, astrologist. She is sitting next to him in a car. It appears to be a 57 Ford. All of these people drive around in 57 two-tone Fords. You notice that? Two-door, see? And they're driving along mysteriously on the darkened road of Utah. We have just left them in the Pentagon, and here we are. They are now driving on this road. And Steve is saying to Barbara, he says, that was really a silly thing that the professor said to us. Why, you and I are both part of the 20th century. We know that no monster of the type that he described could exist in the 20th century. That is a ridiculous superstition. Poor old professor is probably going bonkers, right? He is losing his marbles. And she says to him, "Well, I don't know, Steve. Many people have laughed at him in the past. Do you remember when he came out with that theory about the worms that ate the light bulbs and everyone laughed at him? And then those worms ate all the light bulbs in the A&P outside of Passaic? You remember that? Well, I'm not taking his predictions that lightly, Steve." Well, Barbara, you can be assured that as a biologist, I have been highly trained by the U.S. Army and by UCLA to know that no such creature as Godzonka exists. And now they go around the corner. See, they're in the mountains. Somehow they're in the mountains. He never explains this. Class B movies never explain anything, He just goes around a corner and he sees these two headlights high in the air coming at him from a far distance, and we hear the sound. Now, the camera instantly now switches back to the Pentagon. And we see the old professor is sitting at his desk. And he is surrounded by dusty books. And it's played by Keenan Wynn, He plays all the old professors in these movies. And Keenan Wynn has got this white wig on. He's got this white fake mustache, which keeps slipping. You see, that's the trouble with Class B movies. They never can overshoot. You can't shoot another scene. Once his mustache comes down, it comes down. He has to ad-lib around. Well, my mustache has come off. Maybe it is, once again, it is atomic radiation from the monster. Well, he's sitting here now, and he is worrying, and he is talking into the telephone. Now, remember, he's an old professor. And since he's an old professor, he has an old-type telephone. You know, the kind that Jimmy Cagney's always talking in the gangster movies. Yes, the kind where you hold it up like this. And he is saying, well, I do not know. I am worried about the trip that they are taking. I told them that could possibly be that Godzonka was ravaging the countryside in Utah due to the atomic bomb test. You know, man has been experimenting with forces which could turn loose evil creatures upon the earth. Man is dealing with things which he was never designed to deal with. I have been telling them for years. What do you say? You mean they took off? They are on their way out there? But why? There are McDonald's in this neighborhood. Why are they going there? Great Scott, we must get in touch with them as soon as we can. Get the state police. Contact the Boy Scouts. Contact everybody out there. Because, who knows, but they may be the next victim of Godzonka. Cut, you see, just like that. Good God. And we see now, we switch now to, who are we switching? We're switching now quickly to Forrest Tucker. You know Forrest Tucker, right? Forrest Tucker is playing the grizzled police chief. He has just you see him hanging up. He's been talking to the professor, see? And he's got a big hat on. He's obviously the Utah police chief. They have big police chiefs out there, you know. They're in charge of everything, see? And he's hanging up, and he turns to his assistant. And the assistant was played by Brandon DeWilde, see? And he turns to his assistant, and he says, I just got another one of them crackpot calls, you know? This guy claims he's a professor, and he says we ought to get out and do something about that thing that's hollering around out in the desert. As far as I'm concerned, it's just some kind of a jet airplane they're testing out there, and I ain't going to get the police out at this hour. What kind of a crackpot is that? And at that point, he laughs, see? He spits into his spittoon, and now, here we're getting into the plot, see? We switch back now, and we're in the darkness, and we see Steve. We see Steve leaping out of his car. That's right. Bring it in. Come on. Don't give him instructions there, Mark. He leaps out of his car. And as he leaps out of his car, we see the monster, the giant monster, Godzonka, approaching. We can't really tell how he looks yet because we can only see these great eyes, tremendous eyes. And he grabs Barbara and he says, Barbara, great Scott, good God, what is it? Only us, you and me, stand between the destruction of all mankind. We must come up with a solution. The professor was right. It is Godzonka. And we hear it. It is getting closer and closer. And then a sign comes up on the screen. It says, tune in again next week at this same time for the solution and the end of the thrilling chapter. Number 422 of Godzonka Strikes Again. If you want to hear the rest of this, friends, you're going to have to listen in tomorrow night. That's just the way it is. That's the way the ball bounces, buddy. I don't give a damn if you're bowling or not. Listen, you haven't heard anything. Wait till you hear what Godzonka is after. He is not after Steve or Barbara. He's got bigger things in mind, gang. That threatens the well-being of mankind all over the world.